Hello and welcome back to the Masonic Roundtable, a weekly program where Masons from around the world get together to talk about Masonic news and opinions in a friendly, social manner. As a reminder, the thoughts and opinions expressed here are solely the opinions of the participants and do not represent any Grand Lodge statements or positions. Make sure you keep your conversations open for the public and on the level. To interact with us, you can send questions and comments to the Facebook live stream, the YouTube live stream, and in the comments inside of the YouTube video. My name is John Ruark. I'm a past master of the Patriot Lodge number 1957 in Fairfax, Virginia. And tonight we have a very full house because we have even more than the usual host tonight. So, good thing we've upgraded the platform. Otherwise, we wouldn't have fit all this greatness into one picture. Let's start going around the room, starting with Jason Richards to say hi and for his introduction. Hi, Jason.
Hi, John. How's it going?
Great.
Hey, everybody. Jason Richards here, past master, Vacation Lodge number 16 in Clifton, Virginia, member of the Colonial Lodge number 1821 in Washington, D.C.
Thank you, Jason. Next up, Mike the Intern.
Hey, Mike the Intern here, Junior Deacon and Lodge Education Officer for Triandria Lodge number 780, as well as a member of Lakeshore Lodge number 307. Good evening.
Good evening, good evening. Juan Sepulveda, are you there with us? Yes, you are.
Hello, everyone. Juan Sepulveda here from Orange Blossom Lodge number 80 in sunny Kissimmee, Florida, and the host of the Winding Stairs Freemasonry podcast. Good evening, everyone.
Thank you, Juan. Next up, we have Robert Johnson. How's it going, Robert?
It's going okay. Robert Johnson, member of Ezekiel Bates Lodge in Attleboro, Massachusetts, and past master Waukegan Lodge 78, Waukegan, Illinois, and host of the Whence Came You Masonic podcast. Thanks, John.
Awesome. Thank you. And last but not least, we have our special guest for this evening. So, Mr. Guest, will you sign in, please?
Yes, this is Mr. Guest and the Giant Box. I'm Ian McIntosh, past master of Montgomery Cornerstone Lodge, number 195 in Rockville, Maryland.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Sure.
So,
thanks for having me.
yeah, good stuff. I'm glad you can make it. Tonight, we're going to talk about Maryland Freemasonry. But before we do want to give a shout out to all the patrons who supported the show to get this platform up and running so we can be all over the place, all over the interwebs, and just keep in touch with all of the changes of technology that allow us to keep bringing you content every week. So thanks in advance. All right. So, Jason, why don't you set us up for this week's topic?
Oh, man. So, first met Brother Ian back when I was doing a table lodge at Montgomery Cornerstone Lodge in Maryland, and Brother Ian was one of the brethren in attendance there. He and I reconnected at the Mid-Atlantic Esotericon back in June, and he said he would absolutely love to come on the show and talk a little bit about Maryland Freemasonry because he does stuff and things with the Grand Lodge there. I don't know. It's all very scientific. But we thought it would be absolutely awesome to bring him on because there are I think some unique parts about Maryland Freemasonry that he can shed some light on. So really just want to wind Ian up and let him go.
No, I'm glad you did that. But one additional introduction is I'm really happy we got to have this episode because some of you may know I was born and raised in Maryland, lived there my whole life, went to school in Maryland, and just ended up in my professional career in Northern Virginia. That's when I joined Masonry, but I have never in the 12 years I've been a Mason ever sat foot in a Maryland lodge, and so I feel so guilty that I've missed out on this opportunity for the next door neighbor and home for me. That that I imagine like the altar being covered with crabs in Old Bay to give this natty bow sense of refreshment. So tell us, is that exactly what Maryland Masonry is like? Brother Ian?
100%. You don't even need me
Yes.
anymore.
Yes.
We're good to go.
That's it. I'm demitting and moving to
All
Maryland. Let's
right,
go.
good night, everybody.
I even brought Maryland Masonry to Alexandria, Virginia for you, and that wasn't close enough.
I
So.
did do an epic fail.
No, yeah, I'm trying to think best place to start. So, yeah, like Jason mentioned, we've connected kind of off and on over the last couple years. And one thing from listening through the podcast, as you mentioned, you guys have never really had the chance to talk about Maryland Freemasonry, despite two of you being in Virginia/DC. You know, you've had Pennsylvania on. You know, you've kind of gone around the horn without really hitting on Maryland. And
That's because Pennsylvania does things weirdly.
Am I the only one that feels like I'm
It's
sitting in a
it's
clandestine lodge when I go to Pennsylvania?
Yes. Oh
I,
my gosh.
I feel like I shouldn't be there.
I still love you guys, but wow.
It's great, but I just feel like I'm not supposed to be there. So, yeah. So you guys can let me know if any of this strikes your interest, or you want to go any sort of direction. But I'll just start riffing with some of my notes, and you guys let me know what works. Sound good? Okay. So a little bit, just a brief 30-second overview of Maryland. It is the 42nd largest state, or in other words, the 9th smallest state. It's located just north of DC, just south of Pennsylvania, right in the middle of the east coast of the U.S. We are the largest of the small states. The next largest is West Virginia. It's twice the size of Maryland, and then South Carolina is even larger than that. So out of our small state batch, we're kind of the biggest. We have, it's 12,000 square miles, and we're at about 12,000 Masons. So we've got a Mason for every square mile. But what's really interesting, Maryland is shaped kind of goofy. If you want to look it up on a map, it's kind of long, and it's a goofy shape. And because of that, we've got a wide range of cultures. Given that we're so small, it's kind of a unique situation. We've got the mountains in the west. We've got kind of the big city urban type stuff with being right outside of DC and Baltimore, and then you go across the Chesapeake Bay, where I believe John grew up, and there we go. That's a whole other area down there. It's flat. It's very agriculture heavy. So yeah, despite it being so small, we're blessed to have such a unique range of cultures, I suppose, if you want to call it that. As John mentioned, we produce Old Bay, which is just some spice that we think is awesome and most other people don't think is that great.
Nectar of the gods.
I personally put it on literally everything. So,
good.
Put that stuff on everything.
Basically, I stopped short of ice cream, but and then just kind of interesting fun fact: the Star Spangled Banner was written in Baltimore. So that's just some kind of fun little tidbits. And then more specifically with the related to the Grand Lodge and its formation, it was actually started on the Eastern Shore. So that area that where John's from that picture that's over on the right, that's agriculture and all that, Talbot County, the orange one, Easton is where the first Grand Lodge started. It was originally called, I think, Talbot Courthouse. But it was started by 5 lodges that met around that area, and they originally started talking about it in 1783. Ultimately, realized their independence in 1787 from the Grand Lodge of Pennsylvania. And interestingly enough, our first Grand Master was John Coates, who was actually a past Deputy Grand Master of Pennsylvania, but he moved to Maryland and before he could become Grand Master. So ultimately, I don't know what, I guess, demitted and kind of helped us start off our Grand Lodge, and then in 1793 we moved from the Eastern Shore to Baltimore, and then in 1996 we moved from Baltimore to just north of Baltimore. We've got a beautiful campus up there. We have it's where our Masonic homes are located, and that's where we've been ever since. So some, I guess, more fun facts about Maryland Masonry. So I realize, and I definitely get it for sure, that talking about Grand Lodge and all that, it's kind of a whatever. We're not the biggest fans of Grand Lodge and all that sort of stuff. But I guess I should have mentioned, I'm actually the current sitting Junior Grand Warden for Maryland.
Oh, wait.
So
Officially, we love Maryland. It's great.
I said stuff
can
and things
officially
with the
not
Grand
like-
Lodge, right?
You can officially not like Maryland. You can not like the Grand Lodge. It does not bother me one little bit. But
You're
that's
like
actually
you're actually like one of the first Grand Lodge or Grand Line officers that's ever been on the show.
Wait, I think you're
Is that
right.
true? Have you ever had Mike Jarza back on?
Yes.
But was he
We've
sitting?
had, yes.
Don
No, he was
McIntosh.
passed.
He was passed.
Don
Boom.
wasn't a Grand Lodge.
Oh,
man,
that's
you,
right.
so you know how this works,
So-
right? You
Yeah, we've had
affiliate. You get seen with a Grand Lodge, and all of a sudden, you have Grand Lodge buy-in. Looking at you, Maryland.
We don't want Grand Lodge buy-in.
Wholly owned
So-
subsidiary under the Grand Lodge of Maryland.
So a couple
just kidding.
things. You guys actually reminded me before I start digging myself into a hole. I feel like it's important to have my own disclaimer, which is basically a repeat of what John said. But anything that I talk about tonight are purely my own opinions, or not the Grand Lodge's. I don't remember what John's words are, but basically, just I'm not speaking for anybody but myself, despite being a sitting Grand Lodge officer. So just trying.
So
to
what
cover
you're
my butt in
saying
case I
is
start
you
talking.
speak for the Grand Lodge of Maryland.
That is 100% what I'm saying.
Okay. All right. Just making sure. No, you're good.
No, so one of the reasons why I thought it would be a good idea to not only pursue this opportunity, but get a chance to come on here and talk to you guys about this is because I'm kind of an atypical Grand Lodge officer. I'm younger. I'm in my mid 30s. I feel like I don't have the typical Grand Lodge attitude, and I think that which I guess that's kind of a dangerous statement to make in and of itself, but I just feel like I could potentially bring an interesting perspective to what is otherwise viewed as, usually Big Brother, I guess, in a lot of cases. So, all right. So, Maryland Grand Lodge. Here's something interesting. We do not have a progressive Grand Line.
Wait, that exists? That's a thing? That you don't have progressive lines?
We have a progressive line in that the deputy typically goes to Grand Master, but outside of that, it's a weird setup. So for those that are interested in this, the Grand Master and deputy typically serve 2-year terms, but everybody else serves 1-year terms. So within a Grand Master's term, he essentially gets 2 lines. He gets a set of appointed or elected wardens, and then he appoints the rest of the line. So that creates a really interesting situation with the wardens, because since they don't move up as part of a progressive situation, it's every single year we have an election, and every single year we have a non-political, non-electioneering, non-whatever election that, in my personal opinion, is pretty distracting to us trying to get a lot of real work done. But it is the way it is. So another thing, we have despite having all those different areas and all geographic areas, we don't have districts. So we don't have district deputy grand masters. Instead, we have what we call grand inspectors and deputy grand lecturers. So where a grand lodge would have a deputy or district deputy grand master kind of cover a specific region, we've got this interesting kind of one-to-one connection between the Grand Lodge and each individual lodge. So the Grand Lodge assigns one person, a past master, to be essentially the representative, if you will, Grand Lodge spy, however you want to think about it. And then there's a kind of a chain of command that goes up from there where they report to a regional guy and then a regional guy reports, and it ultimately gets to the Grand Master, but there's no districts. It's all kind of one-to-one. And so the Grand Inspectors handle the jurisprudence aspect of things, and then the Deputy Grand Lecturers handle the ritual. And so one other interesting thing, Maryland is, from what I've seen, at least one of the strictest when it comes to certifications for the worshipful masters. So while, as we all know, doing ritual is 5% of running a lodge. But we, because of our requirements, it's 95 to 99% of what incoming masters focus on. We try to change that by having leadership programs and all that type of thing. But, we have to know all the opening and closing for all 3 degrees. We have to know the floor work in its entirety, and we have to know all of the lectures in their entirety. And you have to certify with one of these deputy grand lecturers in all 3 degrees and basically get signed off in order to become worshipful master. So our current Grand Masters has issued an edict that gives lodges that are struggling a little bit to get new masters the option to kind of waive that a little bit. But to my understanding, not a lot of lodges are have taken them up on that too much. So we like to complain a lot about how much work we have, and yet when you give the opportunity to not have to do as much work, not as many people as we thought would take advantage of it. So
I almost wonder if it's like more of a problem with apathy. The way you talk, though, I had like all these check marks and things I wanted to ask you about. You already talked about elections, and one of the things that I wrote down, and you kind of just touched on it, was the idea of the Grand Lodge's focus. So almost every Grand Lodge in the United States has this, they'll say quality over quantity, but the actions of the actual Grand Lodge take precedent, where they push in, they're more membership driven, as in get more members. Once we get them in, they'll find out how to fulfill themselves. We don't have to worry about that. So, and I don't mean this in any way, I just want to ask, do you feel that Maryland is more membership driven, like pretty much the status quo among most Grand Lodges? Or do you find that there is, because it's smaller, for instance, like Rhode Island, every new master or every Mason who goes through the degrees has to travel to Grand Lodge to take a class before he can move on to the next degree. So there is this, emphasis on the education between degrees. Because Maryland is also smaller, do you guys have something similar? Is there more of an education drive? How do you guys work with that?
So I run the risk of speaking a little too openly. Yeah. We're no different than a lot of the other Grand Lodges you talk about. We're very membership heavy, or membership focused, kind of a numbers focused. One of the things that I've been pushing during my term, if you will, the opportunity that I've been given with this position is to do my best to get people to change their view on that, change their mindset on it. I'm only one person. I'm not the Grand Master. We all know how that goes. It's really, unless it comes from the Grand Master, it doesn't have quite as much pull, but I'm very fortunate that the Grandmaster that I'm serving under is incredibly supportive, incredibly open to new ideas, to trying new things. He's given me more leeway than I would have ever thought that I could be given to try new things and to get this message out there and to see what happens.
That's awesome.
So, yeah,
it just seems like. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, just at the top, and for the last X number of years, I feel like it's probably pretty typical. You know, you go to Grand Lodge and part of the day is spent with the slideshow of here's how many members we did have, and then here's how many we lost, and here's how many we lost, and we, you know, year over year, and you know, we can't continue to lose this, and blah blah blah. And I get it from the perspective that if you don't bring in new guys, then your pool to become worshipful master dwindles, and past masters, at least in Maryland, make up our Grand Lodge. So then the Grand Lodge membership dwindles, and it's kind of a survivor thing, but
a very interesting concept that I didn't understand right when I started first traveling outside of my home jurisdiction. I think it's fairly common now that I have traveled a bunch that you can't be the master or a warden of a lodge unless you've done some kind of a certification. In my home jurisdiction in Illinois, there is no prerequisite. So you don't have to prove that you learned anything to be the master of the lodge. You just get to sit there as long as you've been a warden. And if you haven't been a warden, then you can apply for a special dispensation to get that to sit. But it is interesting that you guys follow that also. You're another state that has, you know, a prerequisite to make sure that you know at least the ritual.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah. We have no prereqs for being a warden. So that is like, if you just showed up long enough and they don't have enough people, you can be elected. But then you go from having no requirements to having, like, you know, months and months and months of study requirements, basically, to go from senior warden to master. Basically, all the requirements, every one of them.
You know, it's interesting because in Virginia, we have one prerequisite to being elected a warden. You have to get your past master degree. So they actually take a degree from, to be a warden, you have to take a Royal Arch degree.
The virtual past master degree.
The virtual past master, yep.
Illinois Grand Lodge had a thing from like 1849 or 1848 to 1865 where that was the case. And then they disbanded it. I wanted to ask you one more thing before we move on. You talked about elections. So for you, because you've served as a Grand Warden now, and you don't have a progressive line, is it more of the case that, let's say, when you're older and retired, you're now more of a candidate, you're in an eligible candidate to become Grandmaster? Or is it just kind of
good question
out there?
So that's another unique thing. We are the only state that I've come across where we've got this ginormously huge pool of past senior and junior Grand Wardens. So I haven't found it in the Constitution anywhere that actually specifically calls it out, but I've been told, and I think it's just kind of an unwritten rule, that once you're one of the wardens, the Grand Wardens, you can't be one of the other ones. So it's not even like, and I think maybe that's I've been wondering, and I half wonder if that's in place to avoid creating the appearance of a progressive line. I don't know for sure. That's pure speculation. But so it's not even that the same guy goes junior, senior, and then kind of drops out. It's like you've got this giant pool of junior Grand Wardens, this giant pool of senior Grand Wardens that in theory is the pool where the new deputy future Grandmaster is selected from. Now, that's not always the case. We just had a Grandmaster a couple of years ago who wasn't a Grand Warden, who just kind of came out of left field and threw his hat in the ring and won. But typically, it's chosen from a pool of Grand Wardens. So, and I can't remember what the rest of your question was.
So yes, you're in the running.
Yeah, that's basically what I was curious.
Yeah.
You're like,
I mean, sure.
Your chances go up or down more so as you get older, right? Like,
and
our
having
good
been
friend-
a Grand Warden.
yeah.
I
That's
mean, you know how
interesting.
Masonry works, at least in its current iteration. You know, you show up long enough, and you're suddenly eligible for lots of things, regardless of any other.
Trophies?
Right. So, sure. I mean, if you
call them honorary organizations.
Oh wait, I mean, yes.
So, yeah, but to answer your question, yeah, I guess this, you know, being a soon-to-be past warden puts me in a in more of an opportunity to be Grandmaster, I suppose. I've got, as we saw in the green room beforehand, I've got a 2-year-old. So this was kind of a like, I want to do this now or wait like 10 or 15 years sort of thing. So I had the opportunity now and was lucky enough to be elected. So it's kind of a do as much as I can now, and then I'm probably going to have to slow down a little bit, you know, make sure I'm focusing my priorities on the right place, and, you know, raising my family and all that. But, you know, who knows in 10 or 15 years? But,
Hey,
you know,
statistically, you'll have good odds because membership will decline, and they're like digging around.
If I just stick around long enough,
just live long enough, just do not expire, and you'll be in.
But to make it abundantly clear, I don't have some like big dreams of being Grandmaster, and that's why I'm doing this at all. The whole purpose of me serving in this role is to serve the craft, is to show the younger members and the younger brothers in Maryland that we can take higher up leadership roles, and to give them essentially a resource within the Grand Lodge to reach out to. Someone who's kind of the in-between. So
now I had another question I wanted to bring up too, and it's something related to pretty much the geography. As you were mentioning earlier, the geography of Maryland is very unique in that it has beaches, it has mountains, it has it's split right down the middle with the bay. It's around Pennsylvania, it's around Delaware, it's around D.C., it's around Virginia. So it's got lots of influences all over the place. And actually, when I did my undergraduate degree, part of my research was in Civil War. Like, it took a couple extracurricular Civil War classes, and I was fascinated with the political demographics of the state, which actually still a lot of it exists up to today because of the geographic divide that comes with, at a minimum, the Chesapeake Bay, and at a maximum, all the other pieces of this oddly shaped free state. So where I'm going with my question is, given that, and given your travels, I'm sure you've seen different flavors of Masonry across the state, and I think that's also compounded because, like, how many Shriner temples do you have?
we have one.
Exactly. So for the entire state, if you want to be a Shriner...
Now, we do have several shrine clubs, but we
Okay.
have one temple.
Right. So that alone would say that, you know, people may not join because it's super long of a drive, or people may be just unduly influenced because of geography. I mean, I know, growing up on the Eastern Shore of Maryland, there were people who, if you had to cross the bay, they wouldn't do it.
Mm-hmm.
They would not cross the Bay Bridge.
That's probably the biggest cultural difference, is both sides of the bay.
That's fascinating.
It's pretty amazing, honestly. So you go out west and you get a lot of the rural mountain culture. It's influenced heavily by Pennsylvania and West Virginia.
Cumberland, baby.
Cumberland.
That's where
my
my grandparents-in-law were from, and they were Masons there.
Oh, nice. Yeah, that's a beautiful area out there. But then, like, I grew up, if you're watching this, I grew up where Maryland gets real small up there in Washington County. I actually grew up in Hagerstown. So that's kind of the edge. Hagerstown and Frederick are kind of the edge of, like, to the east of that is more urban. To the west of that, you really get kind of in the mountains. And then you get south of DC, and it's more rural again. I mean, it's you're right. It's crazy. And the political tendencies typically align with what you would, stereotypically expect from the different geographical areas.
Right. Urban versus rural, etc. Right.
Right. Geographically, we, without getting too political about it, we have a much larger conservative area than we do liberal. But because our liberal area, so right around kind of in between DC and Baltimore, is so what's the word I'm looking for? Compact, dense. There we go. So dense that they essentially make the decisions for the state. So, it's interesting. I was going to say Masonic politics kind of follow that same suit, but I don't know that that's necessarily the truth.
To build on that, do you see different? I mean, it's kind of leading the witness, but do you see a difference of mountain masonry than beach masonry? And
100%. We have no standardization whatsoever, no matter how hard we try. Cumberland Masonry looks entirely different from Eastern Shore, Cambridge Masonry. And while we try to have relative standardization, we also realize that those cultures exist and are very, very strongly rooted in their different areas. And so it's kind of a, part of the job, like I mentioned with the deputy grand lecturers, are to teach the rituals. So a lot of the schools that are taught are done basically as a, let me tell you the way that I'm supposed to tell you how this is done. Now, with that being understood, I know that we are in X location and you guys do this differently. So do what you guys do in your area, but I now get credit for saying that I told you how it's supposed to be done.
That sounds an awful lot like many jurisdictions I know, yes.
What's fairly interesting is because we're so small, the Grand Line actually is really heavily involved in Blue Lodge, especially with installations. So the way that our elections work, so Grand Lodge, we have an annual and a semi-annual communication. Our annuals in November, semi-annuals in May. So we have elections every year in May, and then we have a 6-month lame duck period, and we have Grand Lodge installation in November. Now our Blue Lodges have elections the first 2 weeks of December, and then you have to have installation by done sometime in the month of January. Now, what has happened just, I think, over time and as things have evolved is more and more Blue Lodges ask the Grand Lodge to come in and essentially perform the ritual, the installation ritual for them. So what I think started out as kind of a, let me create more of a pomp and circumstance situation because we have the Grand Master more readily available than a lot of other jurisdictions, in a lot of cases has turned into, we've been doing this for so long, we are actually unable to do the installation ourselves. And so we almost have to have the Grand Lodge or, say a degree team come in and do it. And so what that has resulted in is that it's almost a mark of pride for each Grand Master to see how many installations he can do in the course of the month of January. So it is literally, no exaggeration, anywhere between, say 25 to sometimes low 30s number of installations that the Grand Lodge does in January. It is,
TIL, Maryland Grand Masters are masochists.
Yeah. Yeah. And it is understood that even as an appointed officer in the Grand Line, you're expected to go to as many of those installations as possible. So say if you get down, we've got, I don't know how your situation is in your different jurisdictions, but we've got several Grand Lodge positions that don't exist in Blue Lodge. So those guys don't really have as much to do, but it's basically like we also, unique thing with Maryland is we have Grand in between the titles. So instead of Grand Junior Warden, we call him Junior Grand Warden or, Senior Grand Deacon. So even if you are Junior Grand Steward you're expected essentially to go to all of the installations that the Grand Master schedules out for that entire month. And it's obviously his prerogative, but I haven't heard of a Grand Master consulting with his line to find out what they can and can't do and find out what works and all that. It's kind of he decides what he wants to do, and it's understood that the other officers are just going to follow suit. So, for the last 4 or 5 years, I've done upwards of either attended or participated, because I was an appointed Grand Lodge officer a couple of years ago before I got this Grand Warden position. January is basically shut. You're doing installations Monday through Thursday, and then a lot of times you're doing 2 installations on Saturdays. So it will be, your weeks will look Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, usually Friday off. Saturday, you have an installation at 10, then you have one at 1. And the last couple of years, they've started throwing in installations on Sundays too. And so if you look at that map again, it can 9 times out of 10, it doesn't follow any geographical pattern. Like, it doesn't go like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. It's literally like Monday, you could be at this end. Tuesday, you could be over here. Wednesday, you could be over here. Thursday, you could be down here. And because we're all within, like, worst case scenario, 2 to 3 hours of the center of Maryland, it's kind of understood that you just make it work. So I work full time. I have a kid. I have a wife. And yet it's kind of you work full time. You get off work. I go drive wherever I need to go. Half the time I change into my tux in the car in the parking lot of a grocery store somewhere, and go to a different, it's like that, the Bob Seger or something, the song about doing a different concert or a show in a different city every night, where you get on the bus and then you get off the bus, and you're basically in the same place, because you go into these lodge rooms, and they're a little different, but it's the same basic setup.
Thank you, Detroit.
100%.
You're in Flint.
100%. So we have, in the southern part of Maryland, we have a town called Prince Frederick, and a couple of years ago we had a guy call it Prince Hall something or other, and that's not a big deal, but it's just, these guys expect you to come down and all this, and so it's kind of assumed that it's going to be a special experience.
They want you to care enough to actually know where you are and who you're talking to.
Basically, right. It's not that outlandish of a request. You agreed to do this. In a lot of cases, you wanted to be a part of this. You should be happy that you're wherever you are.
So here's a question for you, Ian. As you're doing all of this traveling, do you get any sort of stipend to do the traveling or reimbursement, or is this all out of your own pocket?
100% out of my pocket.
Oof. It's a good thing that Maryland's a small state.
The deputy and the Grand Master get stipends, and I think the Grand Secretary and Grand Treasurer gets stipends to some extent. I think they maybe get mileage, but the wardens and below, nothing. So that's a good point. In addition to everything else, they're also expected to do that entirely out of pocket. So I bought a new car in the end of December 2017. So it's been a year and a half, and I've got 48,000 miles on it, mainly just because of doing all this crazy nutso driving all over the place stuff.
Wow.
So what you're saying is you no longer have
100%. And what was funny about it was, I don't remember how the logic worked out, but it was something like, we agreed to get this car because I was going to be doing less traveling or something along those lines. And such is clearly not the case, but that's another thing too. On top of all that, it's out of your pocket. So
that's interesting, because a lot of that.
Brother? I'm sorry, Jason. I was going to ask, do you guys have any brother who has small airplane that'll hop you guys around?
Not that I've found, but that is a great idea.
Yeah,
we actually had one dude. So, do you really?
He will fly the Grandmaster around in just a little bit. if he needs to go like Southern Illinois to Northern Illinois. We had a big festival day. We had to be at like 6 different lodges in one day, and he helped kind of like island hop. It was interesting.
Okay, so I should say I didn't. The Grandmaster and Deputy Grandmaster get a car that's sponsored or purchased by the Grand Lodge, so they're basically good to go. Everybody else, it's kind of a how bad do you want this? So
yeah, so it's interesting because in Virginia, the Grand Lodge of Virginia has a lease for the Grand Master, but in DC, it's very much similar to what you're talking about in Maryland, where a lot of these folks, as they're coming up through the Grand Line, it's all out of pocket, and going through the Grand Line, from what I've seen, is just not cheap.
no, it's not. You have to really want it. And in addition to the wear and tear you put on your car, to the gas that you have to purchase, a lot of times, you'll get invited to various table lodges or festive boards, but you still have to pay for them out of pocket. So it's kind of a, thank you. I'm honored that you're inviting me, but this is like the 11th one of these that I've had to do in the last couple of months, and dropping like $900 on table lodges in aggregate is a little rough. I mean, it's not $900, but you know what I mean.
And you still have time to come to Esotericon, so we appreciate that.
Yeah, that's the stuff I like. I mean, it's funny I say that, but no, that that type of stuff. To me, that's the core of Masonry. That's the foundation of Masonry.
Aren't you supposed to say there are no esoterics in Freemasonry? It's just a fraternity. Pay more dues.
Yeah, that's it.
And go study George Washington.
Are you telling me George Washington was a Mason?
So say that isn't exactly the way I hear it on the Common Gavel,
Oh, you listen, huh?
Yeah.
No kidding.
Hey, I listen to almost every podcast.
If there's a Masonic podcast, Mike
has found it.
Listen to them all.
Yes.
Yeah, but that's one of. I guess this isn't quite the direction you were wanting to go, but that's one of another one of my big pushes is that esoterics and Western mysticism is in theory one of the foundations of our entire fraternity, and to discount that to the point that we've basically become a supper club, you're missing the point, in my opinion. And I get that we all join for different reasons, and some guys join for that fraternal aspect and nothing more. But then you get into the whole discussion of, should they have passed the West Gate to begin with? What type of fraternity do we want to be setting up? Quality over quantity? Are we really worried about numbers, or do we want to create a fraternity where, we have a third of the Masons we had 10 or 15 years ago, but the quality is shot through the roof, and our attendance is increased because we have some form of Masonic education, because guys are getting exposed to the deeper symbolism, and so they create a stronger bond with the fraternity as a result. I mean, just kind of what direction do you want to go? And the current direction doesn't seem to be working as well in most places.
If you're just joining us, you've come into hour 2 of the fraternalism versus esotericism.
Sorry about that.
Enlightenment episode. So this is great.
I thought when you close them out, John, you got to say it was great having a past Junior Grand Warden.
Yeah.
We just got an alert. It just happened.
It just happened. Immediate release. I just found it on Hodap's blog.
You guys heard it.
The funny thing is, we told you not to worry about anything before you came on. Yeah. Oops.
Here's the thing, and I know we're joking around about it, but this is the stuff, as respectfully as I possibly can, that I've been talking about all year. So this, for anyone who's been following me or who unfortunately has been stuck in a corner with me at some lodge and had to listen to me rant about stuff, this is what I think is really important, and is one of the big reasons that I wanted to see if I could, get this position, I suppose. So
Yeah.
I think it's really interesting when somebody who is at least aware of Western esoteric traditions or Eastern, whatever the thing is, but something that's deeper, right? That's written into the symbolism of the fraternity and how it works. It's always amazing to me when we find someone like that who gets in, and I always kind of feel like I shouldn't feel this way. Maybe I got to work on this. I feel vindicated when, quote unquote, one of us gets in. But I think knowing the history of kind of how that has unfolded in the past has soured, the way I think about it. I mean, I think about Henry Clausen, right? Sovereign Grand Commander for the Southern Jurisdiction. That guy, the next episode of Whence Came You, I literally just play a speech he gave. And he is like what I would call somebody who is an adept in the mystery traditions. And yet he was at the top. And then when he wasn't, they were like, get all this stuff out of here. Take this stuff offline. Get it out.
Well, that's the thing. Like I am in no way saying that my pontificating about this is having much of an effect at this point.
Sure.
I mean, it's falling on a lot of deaf ears, but I'm hoping that if I just plant that seed, just get guys thinking a little bit about this, that maybe we can, kind of stir the pot enough that in X number of years, we might start to change the culture a little bit.
Well, if nothing else, what you actually offer, which is most valuable, I think, is the fact that you are a friend. You are somebody who gets it, and somebody who might be feeling like their lodge definitely isn't that way, knowing that they have a warden in their own Grand Lodge who has similar interests, validates their thought process. They don't have to feel like they're an outsider or that they don't matter or that they're not, and this is fundamental, that they're not represented. So, I mean, the service that you are providing by doing all that you're doing for the fraternity in Maryland, and then representing kind of the niche small community of people who might be really engaged in the deeper aspects of things, the philosophy of the fraternity, can look to you as that example of somebody who is there and it validates, it's their what do you want to call that? Their cognitive bias.
It's my own just kind of personal awareness, I guess, but it is so important to me to be redundant with the fact that I'm not doing this for accolades. I'm not doing this so you can say, like, which I appreciate, and I definitely get what you're saying, but Grand Lodges across the country and whatever, like the idea a lot of times is you're doing it for the praise and for the title, I suppose, and sorry if you can hear the dog in the back. It's important to me to just, keep harping on the fact that I don't want people to think that I'm doing this for some kind of a secret ulterior motive. It's literally just, I just saw an opportunity where I thought I could be a resource for people, and I gave it a shot, and luckily I got it. Even saying I got it sounds terrible because I don't like the whole like I won an election or whatever thing. But
it matters,
4
that's
more
what,
years. 4 more years.
4 more years. Yeah.
But to your
wonderful
point, before I forget to mention it, about the deeper meanings, one of the things that I go back to a lot is, I think it's in the meaning of Masonry. It's like in the first couple pages or something, I think, where he basically says, if the entire symbolism of Freemasonry is a series of just basic moral teachings, that I could learn just by being a human and existing in society, then what am I doing in the fraternity? Like, I don't need a series of symbols to tell me to be a good person and to treat people differently.
Absolutely.
And and so it's like, okay, well, if that's what we think it is, what are we all doing here?
So I have here a bookmark that is from my lodge, and on one side of it, we have a quote there from Wilmshurst. It is absurd to think that a vast organization like Masonry was ordained merely to teach the grown-up men of the world the symbolical meaning of a few simple builder's tools.
There you go.
So, yeah, meaning of Masonry right in the beginning, classic text. 100% agree.
So that's basically my whole thing for what I'm trying to do. And one of the other big things is stuff that you guys have pushed a lot, which is lean startup methodology and all that stuff, which is basically try things, figure out what the least, I don't remember, minimum viable product or something like that, whatever. Basically, like, try things out. Try something. If you have an idea, try it out and see if that makes a difference. If it doesn't, you learn, just make sure you learn something from it and shut it down. And we've got this thing in Masonry where if you start up something, you can't let it die. It is not allowed to die, and you will we will drag this thing on as long as we possibly can. And part of changing that mindset is, let's see if this type of club works and if that resonates with people. And if it does, that's awesome. And if it doesn't, okay, well, it doesn't make you a bad person or a failure because you tried something and it didn't work.
I'm going to paraphrase a Milton Friedman quote that says, "There's nothing more permanent than a temporary innovation in Masonry."
No, I think Masonry would be a lot better if people just failed more often, and we're okay with that. Yeah.
I mean, heck, we
really,
fail
Really,
all the
I'm
time.
curious. I'm curious. You mentioned that you don't necessarily have the progressive line in the Grand Lodge officers, and you've mentioned the fact that you've looked at the minimum viable product and the lean startup. My question is, like, how are you able to then, if let's say you try and fail and try and something works, how are you able to then pass that along over with the other officers so that they also embrace it and pull it along? Because one of the big problems we find in lodges at the Blue Lodge level is that you have someone who wants to do something in their year, and yeah, it's great, it's beautiful, but it's not the junior warden's year. So whenever he comes up, whatever experiment he did doesn't matter anymore. Let's see what I can do in my year. Like, do you have anything in place to avoid that kind of dropping the ball eventually?
Not particularly, to be perfectly honest with you.
Okay.
And I am not the most creative person. So the way I view my opportunity is to help facilitate and execute ideas that others have who are more creative than me. I think if you give it, at least in Maryland, if you give it kind of a Grand Lodge stamp of approval, it almost supersedes the specific Blue Lodge. So if you make it a Masonic project versus a specific lodge project, you can try to avoid some of that. Like, you're talking, in my year we did this. It's not your year, so I mean, at the end of the day, it's up to the Blue Lodges what they want to do. So if a worshipful master of a lodge doesn't want one of his members to try something out, it's not my place. It's not anybody's place other than the lodge itself and the worshipful master's prerogative to decide if he can go through with it. I think, other than just encouraging people, I think just generally encouraging guys to try stuff out and explaining that, it's not a failure to try something and see if it works. And it's not going to take away, if anything, I mean, honestly, if you're a master of a lodge and your junior warden tries something and it works, you can theoretically take credit for it. if you want to look at it from like a political and a title perspective and all that, like, look what my junior warden did when I was master of my lodge, but just, I don't know. It to me, it's, I want guys to be Masons first and then specific members of Blue Lodges second. Like, I get that they all have their own culture and all that, but like, when it comes to new guys, for example, that are thinking of joining the fraternity, I want them to be, assuming they're qualified and all that, but I want them to be a Mason before I want them to be a member of my lodge specifically. And so I think just that general kind of universality of Masonry attitude, and just staying positive about stuff. I mean, we're a huge fraternity. We have a ton of different cultures and personalities and all that. Everyone doesn't see eye to eye, and you're going to run into guys that you don't like or that don't like you. And it's just how you deal with those interactions. And sometimes you're going to butt heads with someone who just is not going to see eye to eye with you, and there's nothing you can do about it. But that all comes down to trying something out. So part of the failure can be, well, I tried it out this year, but I got no support from my lodge whatsoever, and I couldn't get any resources, and I couldn't get anything like that. So in its current iteration, it failed or whatever, but who knows what things might look like in a couple of years. So
there you go.
And I hate, yeah. Oh, sorry.
Well, it's okay. This is going great. So I think it's about time to start wrapping things up. So let's go around for some final thoughts. Shameless plug, starting with Mike the intern. You've been kicking back, taking it easy this episode.
Yeah. So yeah, I liked hearing about things going on over in the Grand Lodge of Maryland. And yeah, as I mentioned earlier, I have listened to the Common Gavel podcast. I actually enjoy the format of that even. And I mean, to be honest, yeah, there's a focus for membership in the Grand Lodge of Maryland, but because it even comes out in the podcast, but I'll be honest, it doesn't seem to be just about numbers when they're talking, at least when they're talking on that podcast. But it's not as much in there about, the education like we talk about, like what we'd like to see. But it really, I mean, I think through that podcast, I think they've been trying to do a lot of good for the fraternity. And, and I'll say this about, the Common Gavel. Of all the podcasts I listen to, it's the only, North Carolina had one for a short time, but I don't know of any other Grand Lodge that actually has their own podcast other than Maryland right now.
That's true.
Yeah.
All right.
And I enjoyed it. So, I enjoyed listening to everything you have to say. And I think you've got a great feel for why you're where you're at and why why you're doing what you do for the fraternity. And I think that's great, I mean, I can see the great ideas, the way that Maryland can work with a little less of the politics of, progressive lines. So
awesome.
Anyway, thanks.
Awesome. Thank you, Mike. Let's cut over to, let's try Robert. What are your thoughts here, Robert?
Well, I always appreciate the unique position our brothers are in, who are education focused and who are part of a grand line or a grand lodge system. It is a position often painful in that you don't have the immediate power to do what you want to do. You're usually, as somebody who's education focused, is somebody who is driven for that and wants to give that to brothers. But you also have to respect this whole paradigm of the Grand Lodge system. We can't, you can't turn a barge in a bathtub without breaking the bathtub. And in this sense, the Grand Lodge is the bathtub. And so it's always a really unique position. And I think that an immense amount of gratitude and thanks has to come from your constituency. And if you're a Maryland brother and knowing what you know now after watching this episode about what happens and how things are, and knowing that you have an advocate, you should thank our brother here next time you see him. It's just important. So I really appreciated the comment you had about staying positive, being Masons first and foremost, before having, lodge over lodge or whatever the case might be. So staying positive, it's a great attitude to have for leadership. The way you talked really reminded me about a lot of great teachings that we learn in leadership growing up and in schools, and how to treat people in order to create long-lasting friendships. And it reminded me of something that we have in our ritual when we install a new worshipful master, and that is that to know that you are the master of the lodge and these are your brethren, you should also remember that it is by them you're elevated. And so it comes with that great responsibility. And I talk about holding the key to men's hearts is how you have, an army of advocates or people who will evangelize what we're going after here, which is nothing less than a premier lodge experience in really making a difference to the individual Freemason through whatever avenue that takes for that particular brother. It reminded me of a quote also at the end. You talked about making mistakes. I used to buy these little pocket journals when I worked on airplanes, and I would keep it and write little notes. And on the back of this one brand always had these quotes. And one of the quotes, I don't know what it was, but it said an old Chinese proverb or something, he who makes no mistakes makes nothing. So it does take failures to continue to build on those failures to get something to be successful. So that's really it. I just want to thank our brother for coming on the program. And it's not easy to be a grand lodge anything and then to come on a national, world, global stage to talk to Freemasons about this stuff. So really important. Thank you very much. As far as plugs, Whence Came You, 9:30 Sunday night. Tune in this week. You're going to hear a great 12-minute speech, maybe a little bit longer, by the late, great Clausen, talking about the Scottish Rite and what that is. I want to plug MasonicConChicago.com. Check that out. That's going to be next year, 2020, September 18, 19, and 20th. And Lodge of the Nine Sisters in Raleigh, North Carolina. We're going to be, John and I are going to be there. It's lodge number 773. I couldn't remember the lodge number, but we're going to be doing a couple pieces on esoteric Freemasonry. Look forward to seeing you guys 21st. All there.
That's right.
September 21st. So, thank you very much, brother, for coming on the program and giving us this insights.
Hey, Robert, isn't MasonicCon Chicago going to do some sort of unveiling here on the 27th?
Is it?
Probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably.
Just according to the Facebooks.
Yeah, on the 27th, the first speaker announcement will go out via social media. It already went out to people who were on the email campaigns who subscribed to that, but those people know, and they can share that video if they want to, if they're feeling up to it. But otherwise, for those of you who didn't subscribe to the email updates on the website, which you should do in order to get the next updates, they'll see that on social media. There'll be a premiere. I think it's at 8 o'clock in the morning or something. But it'll be good. I hope you enjoy it.
Awesome. Let's head over to Juan Sepulveda, who's been keeping social media busy by monitoring all sorts of interactive content all over the webs tonight. So thank you for holding that fort down for us, Juan.
We've had some good feedback about this conversation. Brothers are enjoying seeing a new perspective or a different perspective about Grand Lodge involvement. And, I particularly, I do enjoy hearing the differences. I commend you, Brother Ian, for, the energy that you're bringing to your Grand Lodge. I do like the vision that you have, even though you have, a family and a job and all that, you're taking uh, a significant number of your daily hours to really make a difference. And I do hope that the brothers, they support you on that. And related to the question that I asked you earlier about, like, how are you able to push forward a vision? I was talking to a brother here in the comments, and I was talking that it's a shame that the mentality tends to be, what am I going to do in my journey through the officer chairs, when in fact it should be, what can we all do together to make a lasting difference instead of 1 year difference. So given what I hear, it sounds like it's a tight knit, in your Grand Lodge, and I think that's a great example for brothers to come together and make initiatives that are not just successful 1 year, but that they actually move forward and help for a long time. So thank you all for listening and watching. All those of you on Facebook Live or watching us live on YouTube, thank you for your participation. Let us know what you learned from this episode. If you have any questions, please put them in the comment section. We check that regularly, and I invite you brothers to listen. This is my shameless plug. The Winding Stairs. Every Monday morning, you'll have a new episode of The Winding Stairs. And we've had some really good conversations with other brothers. And, this last episode, if you haven't listened to it yet, go check it out. Discussing the importance of being a gentleman if you're a Mason. So check it out, thewindingstairs.com. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Jason Richards, over to you.
All right, first things first, want to give a big shout out to Indiana Bryan, Amadou 2002, and our well-loved brother Joe M. for your super chats on YouTube. Thanks so much for supporting the show. You guys are awesome. Thanks so much to Brother Ian for coming on the show and just giving us a really, really good perspective on Maryland Freemasonry and the things that are going great there, and then some of the challenges too. I think the open, candid conversation was just awesome and really insightful and really gave me a lot to think about. So thanks so much for coming onto the show and spending some time just talking to us. Thanks so much to everybody for watching the show, coming back week after week. It's just really exciting to be able to interact with you all, not only on YouTube, but also on Facebook as well. So I love how much interaction we're able to do nowadays. So that's all for me. I'll turn it back over to John, but just thanks everybody for being awesome.
Don't forget to be awesome. Yes, again, I want to extend severe thanks from all of us here for Brother Ian for coming on and taking time out of your evening and your family to come spread the good word of Maryland Masonry. And I learned a lot. I didn't realize it started on the Eastern Shore, so that was a neat, fun fact about Maryland Masonry that I was not aware of. So you've taught me a thing or two tonight. Any last words from you, Brother Ian, before we sign out?
Just wanted to say thanks for the opportunity to come on. I've been a fan for years, and I appreciate the chance to come on and discuss Maryland Masonry and my own perspective a little bit.
All right, very cool. Well, let's see. As for me, again, Maryland has a special place in my heart, and one day, Brother Ian or a couple of the guys from the Eastern Shore are going to get me over to their lodge, not too far, but just to check it out and really get to be home in both my physical setting as well as my fraternal setting. So I look forward to that. But again, learned a lot about the history of Maryland and some of the unique things that you guys do that makes Maryland so special. Also want to give one other additional shout out. While we do have a lot of patrons who support the show, we have a couple of the ad hoc super chats. We also sometimes get random donations, so I want to give a special shout out to our Canadian brother Craig Rideout, who gave us a generous donation just out of the blue. So you never know where brothers are coming from listening, and supporting Masonic education, and we thank you for that, so we can keep this thing going. That's all I got, and so I want to say thank you all very much for watching, and keep searching for more light. Have a good night.